Hello viewers, today we will be repairing an Accurite 5-in-1 weather station. This is experiencing a failure within the temperature and humidity sensor. Good indicator of a failure is either negative 40 degrees, 1% humidity, or both. In this case we're getting both of those readings, and those are caused by a failed sensor or situation where there's a bad connection to the sensor. In my case, there was a bad connection. Actually, the connection got so bad the wire just broke right off the board. I have repaired this in the past. I had to replace the sensor once after about 4 or 5 years, and I'll get into that momentarily. Going back a few steps, to get the unit apart, normally would look like this. There's 4 screws on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is down in that hole there. With those removed, the unit will come apart like this. This is one separate piece. The anemometer and the solar panel is its own thing that can be set aside. And then you're left with this here. This comes off. It just kind of pulls off. It can be pretty difficult to get off, and you have to exercise a lot of caution when you're doing so, because this does have a wire, which, as you can see, just broke off now, so I have to fix that too. But this wire tends to break off of there. That connects to the anemometer sensor down in there. So anyways, so there's 2 versions of this sensor out there right now. This is the older one. The newer one, I believe the only visual difference is that it has 2 solar panels up here, kind of at an angle. Otherwise it looks the same. Internally it is very different, however. The newer version of this sensor has what we call a modular design, and that means that all the components, different components, the sensors and whatnot, connect to the main board with a plug, and so it's very easy to repair. If you have one of these that's the newer version and you're getting these crazy readings for the temperature and or humidity, it'll just be a matter of ordering a new sensor. I believe these are about $12, and you have to just get in here, pull the plug from the board, and plug in a new one. Very easy to do. If you have the older one, which is what I have here, everything is soldered in, so it's not really meant to be repaired. It's kind of interesting that the newer version of the sensor is meant to be repaired. Very rarely do I find that newer versions of products become easier to service, but this is one of those rare cases. And so if you have this one, it's not impossible to repair, but it is going to take a little bit of finagling, and you have to have some background in electronics repair, because you will have to do some soldering and comparing of pinouts. But it's not anything overly complicated if you are willing to give it a try. So this is the sensor, the replacement sensor. This would have come with a plug on it, because this was designed for the newer board. It had a plug on it that would plug in on the newer board. I cut the plug off because I can't use it, and what I ended up doing, because when the sensor spoiled, this wire was still good and attached, I cut the wire, I stripped it, and I connected this new sensor, and everything was fine. Worked for about 2 years, and then the connection here at the top of this ribbon cable to the board just deteriorated from exposure to the elements, and the wire simply broke off, as this one is doing, and it quit working. So today what I'm going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to reconnect the sensor to here. Turn my soldering iron on here and get that warming up. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start by cutting this off, because this is not really of any use anymore. And actually, one other thing that I will mention, the sensor, when you open the thing up, is going to be sitting down in here. It resides like that, and so that's where it is. So we have 4 wires coming out of this sensor, and the pinout is as follows. It goes USS, VDD, SDA, SCL. I don't know what those stand for. I don't have a schematic for this thing, but it's labeled at the top RH3. Yeah, RH3. And what's nice is that on the board it's also labeled RH3. And so even without a schematic, this is still going to be fairly easy to reconnect, because the pinout is actually the same if you hold it like this. So it connects on just like that. So the main difficulty here is going to be, well, two things. But one is there's like a glue over the solder, so I have to get that off somehow. And then the other difficulty is that this has to be here, and the wires are not quite long enough to reach. Now, had I done it this way originally and not tacked on to this like that, it probably would have been enough to reach. So shame on me for doing it this way. I should have done it differently originally, but anyways, that's not really relevant at this point. So what I'm going to do here is I've got this wire, and I'm going to put excuse me, a few pieces on here, or 4 pieces actually, just enough to extend it over to here like this. And we want to have enough slack to be able to push this down and kind of be out of the way. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with doing that. I'm going to make these connections, and then we'll see about stuffing everything back in. And I got to repair this now too, because that came off as well. The first thing we're going to do is separate these wires. I'm going to take a high precision knife and just cut in between here like this. Now that should allow us to separate these. Okay, and now we're going to strip these. We'll go back about maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, maybe 1/6 of an inch. And since this is stranded wire, it's a little bit difficult to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some solder, and I'm going to do what we call a tinning of the wires. A little bit of solder on the iron, and just go over this like this, and this will help to keep all the strings together. Now I'm going to take the wire that we're going to use, and I'm going to estimate that we want about that much to work with. So I'll cut this into 4 different pieces. I'm going to try to make these as similar as possible in length. Okay, and then I'm going to strip both sides. On one side I'm going to go back about 1/6 of an inch to match what's on there, and then the other side we're going to go back about 1/8 of an inch to go into the board. I'm going to put this into a little C-clamp here. This is to make it a little bit easier to work with. And now we're going to solder these wires together. Now what I want to do is create an insulation between these 4 wires so that they don't contact each other and short out. The best thing to do would be to cover these connections in shrink tubing, but that involves going out and buying some because I don't have the right size and I don't like to spend money, so we're going to use hot glue instead. I'm holding these down to a hard, cold surface, and I'm going to take the hot glue and just kind of go over it like this, and it will dry, and then it will come off it'll come off just fine from the rock. It's going to take some time to dry. Actually, it's already getting kind of dry. And I'll turn that over, and I'm going to fill in the other side here as well. And I'm also going to take some glue and put it over where the wires come out, just to give that a little bit of extra security and stability. I don't want that breaking as I try to manipulate it back into place. So that's dry now. I'm just going to peel that up, and it's a little bit stuck here. And this is what we're left with. 4 insulated connections. So I'm going to put a little bit more down there to cover that up, but this is a good way to do it if you don't have the right size heat shrink on hand. It's not the best way, it doesn't look very good, but it works just fine. Now I'm going to attempt to remove these old wires that are in here from the ribbon cable. I'm concerned about this glue that's on here. I think that's going to cause a problem, and this is probably why I originally decided to just tack onto the ribbon cable rather than go right onto the board. But hopefully I can get this off here without too much trouble. I've got that cleaned off about as well as I can get it. I think it's good enough. Unfortunately, I'm just now realizing that this wire I chose to use is about 3 hairs too big to fit through the holes on the board. So I'm going to have to just connect it like this on the top, which is okay, that will work. It's just not as secure as it would be if it was actually through the board, but that's fine. It's not moving around at all, so it shouldn't be an issue. So what I'm going to do in preparation is I'm going to put all the wires together like this, as close together as I can. I'm going to cut them all to be at the same length. because they're a little bit different now. I want them all to be the same. So we'll go like this, and we'll do a cut. So now they're about all the same. And this one needs to get stripped back a little bit more. And so does this one. Okay, now I think we're ready to make the connections onto the board here. So the pinout is the same. In this orientation, it's going to be like that and like that, so it makes it pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and make these connections now, and then we should be getting proper readings again. Okay, I just goofed because these two are not supposed to be joined. There we go. Alright, so that sensor should now be reconnected to the board. Looks like I did it right. So I'm going to reset my sensor here. Let's see if we start getting some more accurate readings. I'm going to clear today's data. And actually I'm going to pull the batteries from the sensor, the transmitting sensor here. Oh, it looks like one of those batteries is starting to corrode. That's a problem. Okay. Yeah, it looks like this does not have a signal. So let's see here. I'm gonna do that. Have that do an initial search again. Okay, it found the signal. So let's see what our reading is going to be. It's going to tell me a whole bunch of things before it displays the reading. It's all connected correctly now, but it's still not working. I'm noticing that UDD does not have any continuity across it, whereas the other two pins have about two, and then this one is 0. So I'm thinking maybe the connection issue wasn't exactly the problem. It may have been a spoiled sensor. So I'm going to order another one of these sensors and put it in there and see what happens. I went to order a new sensor, and it looks like I'm not going to be able to because it is out of stock. And scrolling through the customer Q&A section, it appears the stock has been a long-running issue, going back to a year ago, even perhaps even further. Yeah, as much as 2 years, or as far back as 2 years ago, this is still having a stock issue. Now, they are saying dates of when it's supposed to be back in stock. I don't know if they're failing to deliver or they just can't keep up with the demand. But as of now, their last answer said it's going to be back in stock on April 9th, 2020. I'm recording this video on February 2nd, 2020. That's over 2 months away. That's outrageous. And even then, I don't know if they're necessarily going to deliver and or if I'll be able to order it before it runs out of stock. So, unfortunately, it looks like I'm not going to be able to fix it this time around. simply due to lack of replacement parts available. So that's really a shame, and I've searched elsewhere for this piece. I looked on the eBay, I looked on the Amazon, and it wasn't on either one of those. So that does go to show how consistently this piece fails, though. Anyways, I'm going to close out the video here. Although you weren't able to see the repair be successful, you were able to see what you need to do. So the video should still be helpful if you're trying to do this repair. And while we're on the page here, I'll show this piece of text, and I'll underscore that this piece of text is wrong. It is absolutely compatible with the older version without the black box they're describing, as long as you're willing to be a little bit creative with the way you connect it to the board. So anyways, that's all for now. Hopefully that gave you some good instruction, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this. I really have an objection to buying a new sensor, but I do use this thing all the time, and to not have it for the next 2 months, possibly more, is going to be an annoyance.